Thank you for joining us wherever and whenever you may be watching. Joining me today is the former U.S. Representative for the 15th Congressional District and current representative for the newly redrawn 34th Congressional District, Congressman Vicente Gonzalez. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. Let's start with that change in districts. What have been some of the biggest issues you've seen in your new district now that you've been on the ground?
Yeah, well, I have a coast now, right? We have 2 seaports. We have a very important seaport that now we're going to be exporting LNG from. We are dealing with coastal issues, some of the fishing problems and issues that come up. We have a fishing industry in Port Isabel that's struggled, and we've been trying to help recently. Those are things that I didn't have to deal with in my former district because we didn't have a coast. I have now a naval air station. So we have a military base in Kingsville, Texas. That's very important to the region and very important to the city of Kingsville and the county of Clayburgh that we need to continue to sustain and support. So those are some of the differences, but other than that, South Texas is South Texas. And I always like to tell people when we were in Congress, when I was there together when serving with Filemon Vela, we always saw the Rio Grande Valley as a region. And when you're in Washington, D.C., and people don't differentiate between Weslaco and Harlingen and Brownsville, they just see it all as the Rio Grande Valley or McAllen or even all the way to Rio Grande City. So we need to work together. We need to work as a region up in Washington to ensure we bring home the resources as a region. I think that gives us a lot more influence and power, and at the end of the day, we are one family, and we need to bring it all home to the region that's still growing.
One of the things that's unique to our region, immigration. Recently, we've seen the state step in and create legislation like HB 4, which gives local law enforcement officers power to charge suspected undocumented individuals. What are your thoughts on that bill?
That's a very complicated issue, and I'll tell you, I believe that bill is unconstitutional. I also believe that bill opens itself for discrimination of people here in the Rio Grande Valley. And it may not happen here in the valley, but it could happen when you're traveling to the Panhandle, or you're traveling through some rural area within the state where somebody profiles you because you're brown. And that's a reality. And it may not be a reality for us here in South Texas, but this is a reality potentially across the state. And that is a concern to me. I believe that it's going to be shot down constitutionally. I know that they're betting that this new Supreme Court that is a little more conservative will take their side on this, but at the end of the day, I think these are mostly legal scholars on the court that will see that this could lead to discrimination and unjust results.
One of the reasons that the state says they're creating bills such as HB 4 is they say they're stepping in to fill the gap left by the federal government. Is there anything that you think can be done now to kind of start curbing the surges at the border, or to kind of temper the amount of people we have waiting in line to hear their asylum claims and things like that?
Yep. Well, we have to be honest with ourselves that we have a problem on the border. And it's not a Democratic problem, and it's not a Republican problem. It's an American problem that impacts the entire nation. And we happen to be here, and we're dealing with it on a daily basis. And I always tell my people in Washington, I said, this to us is not politics. This is a reality that our communities have to deal with. Our cities like Brownsville to McAllen, our counties are having to use local resources. And we always get them reimbursed, but it takes a while, and it takes a lot of immediate energy and resources to deal with it when we do have a surge. I have a bill called the Safe Zone Act. It's a bipartisan effort, and what I'm proposing that we do, and I think it's the only solution that I've seen, is it creates a safe zone in Guatemala, in Panama, and in Colombia. And we could do these around the world. And what it does, I think of it as a green zone in Iraq, a safe place where asylum seekers can go and enter. And under this bill, they must go to these centers, and they process their asylum claim there. And we do this in partnership with our host country. We have our agents there as well. And they process these asylum seekers at that juncture. And if ultimately we're going to turn them down, we turn them down there. And if ultimately we are going to allow them in, we give them a document where they can go to the airport and fly to their final destination. And if we're going to have them come to the border and give them the same result, and it does one of 3 things. It eliminates the cartels out of the equation. They've made billions and billions of dollars bringing trafficking people to our southern border. It also allows our Border Patrol and law enforcement to do what they've been trained to do. It takes the pressure off our border. And ultimately, it's the most humane way to deal with asylum seekers. Our laws are antiquated, and a lot of people do abuse the asylum laws, and we can't deny that, and we need to deal with it. I think we need to deal with it far away from our border, 1,500 miles, 2,000 miles, and even further. And I've talked to different presidents in Latin America that are interested in this idea. I've talked to the vice president, to the president. I mean, I believe that we should be doing this on executive order. This is an idea that first came up during the Trump administration, and I conveyed it to President Trump at the time, and who the administration was interested in liked it. But then COVID hit, and they implemented Title 42, which ultimately was just a Band-Aid at the time. And we continue to deal with asylum claims on our southern border. And we live here, and to us, this is real business.
You know, speaking of that, you mentioned the cartels. One of the things that I've asked every single person that's come through here, whether it's a candidate or someone sitting in the chair in D.C., is there have been talks about designating cartels as foreign terrorist agencies. Is that something you would support to get those extra resources to fight the cartel, or is that something you think we should kind of hold back on?
Let me tell you, I support ideas like that, but we need to make sure that we get it right, that we get the language right, because one of the issues that has prevented a lot of even my conservative Republican friends from signing on to a designation of cartels as terrorists is that that would immediately qualify a lot of people to apply for asylum into the United States. And we're dealing with asylum claims that we can't handle already. We're already overwhelmed and have surges. Imagine if all of a sudden you have 30 million Mexican nationals come into our southern border with a valid asylum claim under a law that we created. And so people need to be very careful what they ask for. But now I'm part of the cartel task force with my Republican Congressman colleague, Dan Crenshaw, and we are looking for ways to combat cartels in Mexico. It's shameful what's happened, and I think our economy right now, the largest national security risk to our economy is the cartels in Mexico. They're our #1 trading partner, so we rely on them economically. Imagine being in business and your most important business partner is an alcoholic. That's kind of what we have. And trade has been really good, and it continues to improve and do well, but we have a cartel problem throughout Mexico and many other places in Latin America that we haven't addressed.
You mentioned the economy there, and trade is such a big part of our economy, but let's talk about, you know, what we feel at the dinner table. Inflation, the numbers are showing that it is going down, or slowing down rather. It doesn't really feel like it when we go to the grocery store. The Valley is making strides economically, but we are still one of the lower income areas of the country. What are some things that you think could be done to keep that prosperity track moving forward, or maybe even speed it up?
Well, I think we need to continue to have resources for small businesses, for our schools, for upward mobility. We need to have resources for kids to be able to go to college or technical school without being overwhelmed in debt. When I got out of college, I was overwhelmed in debt. When I got out of law school, I owed over $100,000. And it took me years and years to overcome that. And I think now there are more opportunities for young people to get educated, to get technical jobs, to get college education, whatever they want, and come out and be able to go right into the workforce and make money and start a life, right? Those are the opportunities that we need to continue to create to overcome poverty and obviously inflation. We're leading the world's post-COVID economy. The United States is leading the world in post-COVID economies. And inflation is not just in the United States, it's a global problem, but we've got it more under control than anyone else. Now, when I go to HEB, I complain every time, right? And so I know we're not there yet, but we're doing things that are getting us there. One thing we got to think of, we're at 96% employment in this country. 96% of Americans, more or less, are employed. And I believe that anyone that wants a job can get one right now. If we had high levels of unemployment and this inflation that we're dealing with, that's getting more and more under control, but it's still an issue, I'd be really concerned. But I'm optimistic that we've created a lot of new jobs, 15 million in the last year. We are, you know, our job growth has really taken off here in this country, and You know, we went through 3 years of COVID, whether you like it or not, and it was a global pandemic that impacted our economies, local and across the country, and we're recovering from it. And I think overall we're doing really well, but we need to continue to work to do better.
All righty. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
me
you.
today, Congressman. Congressman Vicente Gonzalez, representative for Texas's 34th Congressional District. You can watch this full interview online on krgv.com as well as our KRGV YouTube page.